Hello, my name is John. I am 60 years old and I am a taxi driver. Since I was young I have worked in this profession and I will tell you about my experience with the dark side of evil. I was always a skeptic. I didn't believe in ghosts or anything like that. Until one night, in my taxi, working on any given night, two old women stopped me and asked me to take them on a trip. They wore very old clothes and they looked dirty. One of them had blows on her arms and her face. The other was carrying a suitcase that seemed very heavy. I offered to help her, but she was very abrupt. She told me not. So I just walked away and headed for the taxi. Once they were inside, that trip began that to this day I remember as if it were yesterday. She was showing me the streets that she should take, strange and very lonely streets, where darkness reigned. Everything was bleak and haunting. It was a 2-long-hour drive and during that time I could see something flying near us in the rear-view mirror. It seemed to be a bird, but I couldn't tell what species it was. Only if it was large and completely black where thanks to the moonlight I could see it. They seemed distraught and in a hurry to get to their destination. When suddenly I heard the cry of a newborn baby, I quickly turned to see them and they just looked at me as if nothing was wrong. I kept driving. I didn't want to ask anything, since what my eyes had seen was enough. I wanted to get to where they were going quickly because all that gave me the chills. Suddenly one of the old women yelled at me, "Hi! Stop!" Then I slammed on the brakes and asked them, "What's going on?" They just got out of the taxi without saying anything and one of them said to me, "Here is your money." Then I took the money and left them there. They stayed in a place where there was not a soul. A lonely place with nothing around it. All of this was strange and very creepy to me. But he was thanking God that this trip was finally over and that it would only be a story to tell. I was wrong. On my return I saw that animal flying again behind the car. He didn't understand what that could be and he didn't want to find out. I kept driving and trying to ignore that animal, but suddenly it was impossible for me to do so because that animal was no longer flying a short distance from my taxi. Now it was flying close to my window. Then I started to get nervous, very scared, because it no longer he looked like an animal but a human with wings and a beak. His eyes were empty sockets, filled with endless darkness. But even so I felt his fixed and penetrating gaze towards me. He began to peck at the window as he tried to break the glass. I did not stop, shake and fear losing control of the car. He kept pecking violently at the window that I came to think for a moment that it would break the glass, but suddenly, in the blink of an eye it disappeared. I managed to control myself a bit and decided that day to end my workday and return to my house. Upon arrival my dog Brandon received me. I leaned back in my chair still with that nailed in my thoughts. I could not forget it. I went to go up to the second floor where my room was. My dog Brandon was with me. When I got to the door I heard the window creaking. It seemed to be whipped by the wind. It made me strange because it was not windy. I walked inside from the room and I turned to the window. My dog started barking very violently. I approached slowly. When I arrived I looked out and saw at a short distance that animal that chased me throughout the trip, standing, staring at me without blinking. He looked as if he wanted me to give him something of him, something that belonged to him and that I had. He raised a hand and indicated to me to open the door. My skin prickled. I was speechless and I was very scared. My dog kept barking. I just tried to ignore that, closed the window and sat still on the bed next to Brandon. Brandon didn't seem to calm down. He stood in front of me and kept barking towards the window. After a few minutes he calmed down and started scratching at the door asking me to open it. Then I got up and opened the door. He went out and started down the stairs. I was behind him. When he reached the last step, my dog started barking again towards the window that was next to the front door. I just stood there with somewhat accelerated breathing. I had chills all over my body. I did not know what to do. Fear was eating at me. When then I heard the same cry of a newborn baby that came from outside. The same cry that I heard while carrying those old women. And now it could be heard outside my house. I decided to look out the window even when I felt myself collapsing with fear. When I finally reached the window, my eyes seemed to come out of my sockets. My blood froze. My legs were shaking and I was paralyzed. My God, what a macabre and creepy scene I was watching. That animal would tear out his eyes with its beak, one by one, what seemed to be a baby only hours old. I just kept standing there watching that was horrified while he continued to eat the baby's eyes. But it was not really a baby. My eyes began to see how that supposed baby began to take the shape of a strange animal. It fell to the ground and arms began to come out and long legs, very long. I just couldn't keep seeing that creepy thing. I walked away from the window shaking. I thought about getting out of there. My dog was coming after me. I ran to the garage and got into the taxi. It was then that I saw that one of the old women that I was taking on my last trip, that which they would not let me touch. Yes, that heavy suitcase. That suitcase that was still in my car. A suitcase made of animal leather. Would they forget it? Or did they just leave it on purpose? I didn't know. What I did understand now is because that animal was outside my house asking me to open the door. It came through the suitcase. I took the suitcase and went to my room. My dog was still with me, already calm. Each step that climbed, the suitcase felt heavier and more difficult to carry. I didn't know if that animal was still outside, but in case it was still there, try to make as little noise as possible. Upon entering my room, I was able to carry the suitcase to my bed. I looked at it for several minutes thinking about what could that suitcase contain. It looked a bit creepy. It had many symbols and it was made of leather. I was afraid to find something more frightening than what was outside my house. I hesitated to open it and see its contents, but at the same time curiosity took hold of me. After thinking about it, I decided to open it. I put my hands on it and was about to open it when I heard, knock knock. Someone knocked on my door. Who could it be at this time? My dog left my room and started barking in front of the front door. I followed him. Reaching almost the last step, I stopped. I looked out of the corner of my eye that something ran towards my room. My dog left after that and I followed him. When I got to the door of my room, I opened it very slowly. When we entered, Brandon, a kind of strange four-legged animal, was thrown on top of him. It was on top of the suitcase. I was simply perplexed. I couldn't move. That was very scary. My dog kept attacking that animal. When I saw that strange animal, it began to take human form. My eyes could not believe it. It was unreal. That had become one of the old women to whom I made that trip. This one through my dog. I kept standing, unable to believe what my eyes were seeing. She defiantly took the suitcase and just told me. In the rush, she forgot me and left the room. When he reached the front door, he stopped. He stepped back and looked very pale. I was just watching when I saw that human-shaped animal lean out of the window again. While that old woman seemed terrified, she threw the suitcase and took the shape of a large bird, almost similar to that of that animal that lay outside asking me to open the door. She tried to take the suitcase when there was a loud bang on the door. I then ran to the door with the intention of opening it, but that old woman in the shape of an animal stopped me and she told me, "Don't let him in, I'm saving your life." So I stopped while that animal kept asking me to open the door. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who of them would not have the intention of ending me. When that old woman took the suitcase again and asked me, "Do you want to know what this suitcase contains?" I was terrified by everything that was happening. I told her, "I just want you to leave my house, please." The old woman began to laugh very macabre and with much derision. Then I ran back to the door and she screamed, "Not! Don't open it." But it was too late. The door was already open. That old woman began to scream in anguish. She took the suitcase tightly while that animal came walking towards her. She did not understand what that suitcase contained that they both wanted so desperately, eager to possess it. While I was still standing watching, that animal entered the house and took the old woman, began to suck her soul, until she gradually became smaller until she was like a baby hours old. She started gouging his eyes out of hers with her beak and then ate them. The cry of that baby could be heard throughout the house, until it fell silent and then began to take the shape of an animal with long legs and arms. That animal took the suitcase and began to open it. I just kept standing watching everything that happened, perplexed by something he had never seen before, something so frightening, before, something he did not believe in. When he opened the suitcase, he put in what was left of that old woman, closed it and said, "One less witch." Then I understood that in that suitcase lived corpses of dead witches, and that the objective of that old woman was to give life to those corpses as only she knew, by means of black magic. That animal was only the caretaker of that suitcase that those old women had taken from him and that now had returned to her hands. He grabbed the suitcase and just flew away. After that experience, I have no doubt that evil exists, that they inhabit around us and that they observe us without our realizing it.